then you can remove the VM. So we have different ways your VM can be evicted. You can choose to deallocate the VM, and when you deallocate the VM, if you have stuffs that are saved on your disks, you can always go back and get your stuffs out of your disks, right? Because you have your disks there, you can actually recover those stuffs. But if you're deleting it, that means you're deleting everything from the VM. So you can choose different eviction policy when you're using Spot, but I'm not using Spot. So you can as well just read more about Azure Spot in terms of how you can actually save costs when creating a virtual machine. So this is where we talk about the sizes. So if you look at the sizes here, I can click on see all sizes. And when I click on see all sizes, remember I was talking about when you probably want to get a computer and the person selling the computer is asking you, what do you want to do with this computer? What will you be running? Like they just want to get an overview of what you want to use with your computer. The same way with you when you're creating VM. What exactly do I want to do with this VM? Do I want to set an application on it? Do I want to probably use it for just general purpose, or I want to use it for my database? So when you ask yourself those questions and you know what the power, the workload that you're going to be consuming, right, you can decide on what you will select. And when you're selecting that, you have to balance that with your cost. So once you do the selection of what you want, you should actually see it here just the same way I'm seeing mine here. You can see what I selected now. I'll be using 2 virtual CPUs and I'll be using 8 gig RAM, right? And this is the cost per month I'll be paying. Now, remember, this cost can actually change. It's depending on how you use it and how you turn on your VM, right? So, but this is an estimate of what I'll be paying for a month. Now, after selecting all of these, we are at the point where I need to select the administrator account. So for administrator accounts, it's just like your computer account. Just you're trying to sign into your local account in your computer, right? You need a username and password to sign in. So that's exactly what you're actually type in here. So if you look at this, most times people get confused with this. This is like the name of this VM I'm creating, and this is more like the user account that I'll be using to sign in or log into this VM. So that's exactly what is happening at this point. So I will just choose a name for it. So I can just say Azure user. Let me just say Azure user. Yeah. So I'm going to give it this name, and then I'll give it a password. So let me give this a password. So I will just confirm the password. So now my password is confirmed. So now this has to do with the inbound port role. How are you going to be accessing these VMs, right? Am I going to be, if I'm using remote desktop, which port will I be using to access it? Now, all of this, you can as well add them later after you've created the VM. You can even choose to remove them. So we have different ways which you can actually access this VM. If you're probably creating a Linux operating system, you would be using the SSH22, right? You can always come back and edit all of this. And for licensing, you can always do that. So this part here just have to do with disks, right? Which type of disks do I want to use for my OS? Am I using the premium disks, right? Am I going to be changing it to HDD, the standard disks? That's basically, do I want to attach a disk to this VM that I'm creating? So this is the part where we do all of that. So I'll just leave every other thing default. Now you can see it's already creating a network for me. So basically, if you're probably working in an environment where you need to probably create a VM, you would not have to be doing you would not have to be creating this by default, because this is just creating a default VNet for me. So, but if you're probably adding this to, if probably you already have a virtual network you created, you can choose to select the virtual network, add it to the virtual network, add it to a particular subnet you want. You can even add it to a NIC that you want, right? All of that, you can do all of that. And if you want it to have a public IP, you can choose to add it, create a new public IP or add an existing public IP. So basically what we are doing here is just everything about network. And yes, for management, right? Remember, you're in charge of you have some of the responsibilities are for you in terms of your virtual machines. So you can choose how you want to control your OS patching, the backups, and shut down. This is like very, very important, right? If probably you know at a particular time you need to turn off this VM, right? It's always advisable you set a shutdown time, because auto shutdown, if you forget to shut down the VM, you would still be charged for it. But if you're not doing anything at a particular time and you forget to do that, the auto shutdown can actually send a notification to you, just the way I configured this now. It will send a notification to me and say, okay, I your VM will be shutting down so time. Do you want to extend it to maybe 30 minutes or 1 hour? I can choose to extend it, and I could choose to just say, okay, shut down. But if probably I don't even get this mail, probably I'm busy or I'm asleep, I'm done with work, and I forgot to shut down the VM, it will automatically shut the VM for me. So there are a lot of stuffs that are involved when you're creating a VM, and you can always come back to edit most of these stuffs. So we also have monitoring, where you can monitor your VM, get alerts and all of that. We have also the advanced settings, extensions. Yeah, we know Microsoft is going to handle some parts, responsibilities, while we handle some. But the good thing about the responsibilities that we're handling, Microsoft, they've created some features that will make our responsibilities easier for us while we are handling them. So if you go to these extensions, we have some security extensions we can install, and other agents we can install to these virtual machines while we are creating it. You can see agents for cloud workload protection, agent for server monitoring. You can install all of this while you're creating your server, right? So this is the advanced. And if we come here, tag, right? I don't know. I think I probably spoke about tag, but tagging just basically mean if I want to monitor billing based on departments, or I want to tag my resources and other stuffs, right? I can actually do the tagging, and I can still go back and do this after creating it. So once I am done with this, I just need to go to review. So once the review validates that all my inputs are correct, I will get validation pass, and then I can create this virtual machine. So once I hit create now, what would be happening is this virtual machine will be creating. And once it is done, I can now log in, and I can now log in to the VM. So this deployment, I don't know how long that is going to take. That's why I was just looking at it. So what I want to do, I want to look for a VM I probably have. So I just show you what it looks like when it is done. So I'm on another screen, and let me just check this like real quick, and I'm done. Let me go to the resource group, and I would look for, okay, so I have another VM here. Perfect. So this is another VM. Yeah. So this is another VM I have here. So if you look at this VM, it is already created. This is, or is this not the same VM I'm talking? Okay, I hope I'm not looking at the same VM. Okay, no, this is another VM. So this is another VM that is already provision. If you look at this VM now, this is the virtual machine, and this is the public IP it's created. You can see the network security group was created also, the virtual network, and the network interface with the DICs, right? You can see that I wanted to create a VM, but now I'm having other resources attached to the VM. And lucky for me, Microsoft have what we call resource group. So with resource group, I don't have to say, oh, where's the virtual network for this VM? I know I created the virtual network. It's probably hiding somewhere. So I can see everything just in one resource group. So now that I have this resource group, I can always just click on this VM. And when I click on this VM, my VM this is what it should look like. So this VM is not running. I can just click on start. And when I click on start, I can now click on connect. And when I click on connect, let me just click on start and show you what is going to happen. So if I click on start now, it will just take some time to start. And yeah, so there are other stuffs you can actually configure within your virtual machines, like network. You can go change the IP address. You can go create inbound rules. You can block stuffs and all of that. Yeah, you can do other stuffs. But now this virtual machine just said, okay, started virtual machine. So I can come to connect, and when I click on connect, you can see I have RODP, right? This was why I turned on RODP on the other VM I was creating. So if you look at the RODP now, it's going to be logging in with this port number. So I'll be using the 3389. So if I click on download RODP, I can now connect to this virtual machine. So this is what it's going to look like. I don't know if I remember the name of this virtual machine. So I will just say keep and open. So if I click on open, so this is what it's going to look like. And then I can say connect. And when I say connect, I need to put in the name of this virtual machine and the password. So I just hope I used the same name. So this is going to be Azure Show. I have to go and check it. I can always check it, but let me just see if this works. So yeah, so now this worked. So you can see it's now asking me for certification and all of that. I'll just say yes, or I can choose to say trust this computer. Like you don't need to ask for this, and this is now connecting, and my virtual machine is actually running. So this is my virtual machine running. So I'm now logged into this virtual machine. So this virtual machine is actually setting up. So I think I've probably not used this virtual machine before. So this is the virtual machine actually coming up, and with time, it will just configure everything. Then I can use it. Yeah. So you can see now I'm logged into this virtual machine, and you can see it's just like my computer. I can choose to do whatever I want to do. I can use it for my web application, just set up my IIS, create my load balancer and all of that, and do everything I want to do. So my server manager is already booting up, and this is basically the what knowledge you need in creating a virtual machine in Azure. So I would just have to take a break now. Next week, I will try to explain what the virtual machine skill set is all about. And I will also try to compare the availability set and the availability zone so you don't really get confused when you hear those two terms being mentioned. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. And Frank, I would be passing over the next session to you. Thank you so much.
Okay, that was actually a very good session there, Solomon, demonstrating how to create a virtual machine in Azure and connect through your on-premises. Very good. So I'm just going to share my screen there, and I'm going to do some stuff there on Azure Site Recovery. Second now. Present. You can see my screen there.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So there's my details there. If anybody needs to contact me, LinkedIn, my blog, frankfileby.cloud. There's some of the certifications I have. Won't bore you too much with them. So this is what I'm talking about. Disaster recovery in Microsoft Azure. How to protect your business with Azure Site Recovery. So just an outline of this small presentation, an introduction to Azure Site Recovery, like what actually site recovery is. It's like maybe your on-premises got interrupted through a flood or storm damage or whatever. You can use Azure Site Recovery to get your business back up and going again. Understanding disaster recovery and business continuity. So like how to get your business back up and running basically very quickly using Azure Site Recovery. Azure Site Recovery, some features and capabilities. I'll go through them further. Azure Site Recovery deployment options. I have another slide on that there as we go on. and some of the best practices for Azure site recovery and real world cases. Just as I was saying there, like if you had a flood or an earthquake or something like that and your business got interrupted, you can use Azure Site Recovery to get you back. Demo, I won't be doing a real full demo. I'll just show you the Azure portal and how to set it up. And then if we have any questions and answers. So, introduction to Azure Site Recovery. It says what's on the tin. It's going to recover your site. If either your on-premises one goes down, or if your online, your Azure site, something happens that you can recover it from another region. I have another slide on that coming up, which will explain it in more detail. So understanding disaster recovery and getting your business back up. So you can see at the start here on the left-hand side, so pre-disaster, that's when everything was working okay. And then the event happens here, this black line there. So something could happen like power outage, earthquake, flood, or something happens here. And then you're going into the phase then of disaster recovery. Depending on what happened, it could be something you can get back up and running in a number of minutes, or could take weeks. And then moving on to the immediate recovery, it could take weeks, could take months. We had cybersecurity hack here in Ireland where our health department got hacked, and it was long-term recovery. So it actually took months, even over a year, to get everything back up in line. So it's very important to have a kind of a plan, business continuity plan for your business. So this is kind of the features and capabilities of it. So over there on the left, you'd be using a site recovery for the virtual machines, and this is how it's all kind of connected up together. So you'll have, first of all, you can create an Azure Site Recovery Vault, and this one here on the left, like it says, your source environment, like this could be your on-premise, and then you'll have to pick the target environment, and that could be Azure. So you could be putting your on-premise and putting Azure as your target environment. So if something happens to your on-premise and you want to get back up and running again, you just log into the Azure service vault, and you can tell it to either fail over to your on-premises, or you could get it to fail over to another region. So like I'm in Dublin in Ireland. That's where Microsoft has their data centers, and it has kind of three data centers. So if one goes down, the other, and I have a slide there to show us that as we go on. So as I was saying, you can go from on-premises to Azure, or you can have a Hyper-V, you can have VMware up to Azure, or you can go Azure to Azure. As I was saying there, like if I'm in Dublin and I'm going to back up to another Azure region, we would back up in Holland, so which is Western Europe, and all these are kind of these sites are paired with each other, like so. For all the stuff in the background is all set up. So private cloud to Azure, any cloud to any cloud, or Azure to Azure. So best practices for Azure Site Recovery. So the numbers here, like number one, obviously, is your site recovery, your backup. Number two here shows replicated items. So like you might have 9 VMs, and this will tell you you're all good, everything worked out. Testing your failover to see does it work. So you could fail over from one Azure region to another Azure region, and it'll tell you here. It says failover test success. So if you had any issues with your configuration, then it will show up here, and your recovery plans then over here in the other part. Number 5, if you have any errors or anything goes wrong with your failover, it will show up here. And number 6 there then is just showing you kind of on-premise virtual machines and infrastructure, servers, and there's your Azure Site Recovery and your storage. Number 7 is your recovery plan, and number 8 then is kind of any jobs that happened in the last 24 hours. So this one here gives you kind of how an Azure region is set up. So like as I was saying, I'm in Dublin. Well, Microsoft's data center in Ireland is in Dublin, and they have one in North Dublin, one in the South Dublin, and then they have one in the West. So if any of these availabilities, like your stuff is saved, all your data is saved on the 3 regions. So like if one goes down, your data is available in the other 2 zones. So it's very good. So this is kind of cross-region replication. So we have our 3 availability zones here, which could be Northern Europe, which is where the data centers in Dublin are. It's called Northern Europe. And then your other one that is over here, your disaster recovery, could be over in Holland. So if something happens to the Northern Europe one, you can just fail it over from Holland. Show you there just in the next slide. So as you can see here, the regions are paired. Like Northern Europe is where I am, Dublin, and there's Western Europe, and that's Holland. So that's kind of an idea of what Azure Site Recovery is. Second now. So I'm just logged into the Azure portal here, and so we're talking about site recovery. So if you just type in site recovery, so down here, backup and site recovery, so you click into that one. And this is just a few things like Solomon was going through filling out there for the virtual machine, whatever. So your resource group, you can use an existing one or create a new one for that one. And the name of your vault, because you have to create a service vault, and then you pick your region. I'm not going to, because we don't have too much time now, but I'm not going to configure the full one, but I'm just going to an idea of what to fill out. And the networking stuff then as well, you can allow public one or you can deny public. And the tags again, Solomon was going through there earlier on, if you want to tag different departments or different subscriptions. And then you hit on this one and it'll tell you whether everything is filled out. So that's an overview there of Azure Site Recovery. So how are we doing for time? Dan, over to you if you have anything for us.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks for that presentation, Frank.
Okay.
That was great. Let me make 2 adjustments here. Let's see if we can get these working successfully. Share screen, window. There we go. So I think since we're towards the end of June, and Solomon and Frank, we started this in January of this year.
Yeah.
I put together some slides to say thank you to both of you, and I used Microsoft's new capability called Cameo, which is in PowerPoint. So this leverages the ability for PowerPoint and or Teams to take over your video and embed your video in different ways that you might choose in a slide presentation. So for instance, if I wanted to put myself in the center of this spiral, I can resize myself. I can right click on my object here and go to format camera. And I have options like changing the picture color. Since the coloration of this is black and white, I might want to make myself black and white. In this slide, to thank Frank for 6 months of leadership on the Azure and AI show. And then I can also think about the transitions that I have between slides. So I could morph, and between slides, morph into another position, do the same thing we did with the camera and the recoloring of my object. You can see that wherever I am within the frame kind of changes. I can resize the Cameo objects, and then I can also do, the morph transition between the position that I was and the position that I'm moving to with morph. So that takes the circle and makes it into a heart. And then with a third location, I can choose to morph from the heart to a circle, or I can highlight my circle and go to camera format. And I have a number of camera shapes that I can choose. So I could go with a lightning bolt. I could go with a arrow, maybe pointing back to my name. So Solomon, Frank, and Dan have been pretty involved for the last 6 months. I appreciate both of you spearheading this, coming up with topics, inviting guests. It's been super fun to do this along with both of you. If I stop sharing this window here, which I think I can do, I've got 2 monitors and I've got them kind of awkwardly situated here, overlapping each other. Share screen, window. Let's go to my Teams window here. So within my Teams window, same type of thing. We have the same PowerPoint open. I have a local copy open, I believe now. So you can see that the PowerPoint doesn't have the black and white because it wasn't in my OneDrive that I was editing, but we've got the circle here, and the circle in Microsoft Teams will use the virtual background that I have selected. So if you select Cameo and then upload your Cameo to PowerPoint Live, one really neat thing that you can do with this in PowerPoint Live is if you switch presenters and they're using PowerPoint Live, their video gets embedded into the PowerPoint as opposed to your video. What I have discovered, however, is that PowerPoint Live and this live embedding of the video is not captured in the same way in a recording or in a stream to something like LinkedIn. The reason this is working is because we're using StreamYard, and I'm sharing my screen within StreamYard, so you can see the entire experience of if I'm using PowerPoint to do things with Cameo, and now I can show you the presenter's experience with Cameo in Microsoft Teams. So we can see Frank. Maybe I transfer the Teams meeting over to Frank. Frank's video would be embedded in the location that I chose on the slides. He would get his virtual background in Teams shown. Maybe on the second one, we flip over and we have Solomon present. And if Solomon's presenting, his video would get presented in the little heart. And then on that third slide, I still have the circle here, but we can see that the circle represents my video, and then wherever I am within the frame can be adjusted. So that's a little bit about using Cameo, which is fairly new in PowerPoint, and then either using PowerPoint to present or using PowerPoint Live, which is available from the Share pull-down menu in Microsoft Teams. And towards the bottom, you'll see a whole section of PowerPoint Live, or you can upload from your computer. So if I saved that file, which I don't think I saved it yet, and we uploaded it from our computer, that would be a live or an update in this case, where my video should be in black and white as opposed to in color. We'll see if that works here. Would you like to resume? No, I want to go back to slide 1 and see if you... That's interesting. It doesn't look like it corrected the color, even though the slide looks like it had the color changed. But that's a little bit of information about our journey in 6 months of the Azure and AI show, a couple thank yous, and a little bit of PowerPoint trickery in both Teams and PowerPoint.
Very good,
that was a great presentation. And also, I would like to say thank you to you, Dan, for always being a support to this AI and Azure show. And Frank, also, thank you so much for organizing the show. And to everyone that have been joining us on this show, I would also like to say thank you to all of you guys, because without you guys, there will be no show. Yeah, so.
Good point. Our audience and our guest speakers. I mean, we've had, I didn't even want to try to add up all of them over the last 6 months. It's got to be,
we've had
maybe not 100, but we've definitely hit more than 10 guests. Guests or people that have presented and joined us for conversations. It's been great.
So thank you, Dan and Solomon, as well, for being here and supporting the show. It's been great. So we keep onwards and upwards, and I think next week we're going to have Append Me Stephen going to.
Awesome.
He's going to do a presentation for us on I think Active Directory and Azure Active Directory. He's going to do a demo. So hopefully that will be for next week. And on that, we're up on the hour. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you next week at the same time for the Azure and AI show.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Thanks all.